11-hole stretch came after I was 1 over for the day and 4 over for the tournament after 5 holes. I'm sure Richard Noon, a kid at the club and my caddy for the week,
Hello there, and
I was on my way to missing
this
the cut.
First hole,
but years later, he told Ewan Murray, a writer for The Guardian, that just then I said, "It's time to turn this around." Richard said that from there, it was like a switch was flipped. My self-confidence soared. I realized I could play this game at the pro level. I was becoming more efficient, and I wasn't wasting shots like I did when I was playing pro events earlier. I figured I just needed to get into a rhythm of playing tour events, and then I would do well. I was certain, when I came to the Open, that I would soon turn pro. But the second round convinced me I was good enough not only to play against tour pros, but to compete and win. Looking back now, I do wish I had stayed one more year at Stanford because I liked it there so much. I missed the long nights when a group of us talked about anything. I missed going away for Christmas vacation and looking forward to seeing my buddies after and catching up with them. Stanford students were exceptionally smart, so some of our discussions went far afield. One night, we talked about Descartes for 3 hours, and our entire suite of 5 or 6 guys got deeply into it. Another night, we talked about the evolution of Mongolian tribes in Central Asia. I could talk for hours about the evolution of the golf swing, but this was new territory for me, and I found it very stimulating. It was invigorating to talk about subjects that weren't likely to come up on tour.
Starting things
I
off
missed
at
those
1
nights,
under.
but it was time to turn pro. I'd never seen anything like I saw in Milwaukee at my first tournament as a pro. Back at the LA Open that I played when I was 16, the first tee was packed, and there was a big fuss around me at the beginning of my round. Then everyone went to watch the top guys once I started playing. I learned to deal with big crowds, but was also fine playing when the spectators moved on. Milwaukee was totally different. The crowds were big all the way through. It was so different from a regular tour event in that most of the spectators were following my group only. It was trippy. In Milwaukee, I ripped my first drive 336 yards down the fairway.
Here.
It was a great
not
feeling.
Sugarcoat it.
I played with Bruce Litsky in one round, and I looked forward to that because he hit everything with a big fade. Even then, you didn't see golfers curving the ball that much. If anything, it was a slight fade or draw. But he hit these big slices out there. I'd heard about the way he played and had seen it in telecasts, but it was different to experience it. He hit it so far left to a back left pin on one hole that I thought the ball was gone. I was about to yell 4 when all of a sudden the ball started slicing and coming back, and it finished 10 feet from the hole. Okay, I thought, I didn't see that coming. This was just another sign that tour players had a lot of game. I mean, every tour player. Nobody got to the tour on luck. It seemed like I played every week after I turned pro, which was much different from playing maybe 1 or 2 college tournaments a month. I wanted to win my PGA Tour card for 1997, which meant I needed to keep playing. I tied for 60th in Milwaukee, finished 11th the next week in the rain-shortened Canadian Open, which went 3 rounds, tied for 5th at the Quad Cities Open, and for 3rd at the BC Open in Endicott, New York, my 4th tournament since I became professional. The tournament was shortened to 3 rounds because of poor weather.
14 feet to the
My
hole.
earnings through the first 4 tournaments guaranteed that I would finish the year in the top 150 money winners. That meant I could be given unlimited sponsors exemptions in 1997. All the guys at the BC Open were congratulating me on getting my card so fast. That was the coolest thing ever. Now I was a real tour pro. I'd secured my playing card privileges and gotten my money clip, the recognition in a tangible form that I had made it to the PGA Tour. I won the Las Vegas Invitational 2 weeks later, finished 3rd at the Texas Open, and then won Disney in October. I was getting tired because I'd never played as many tournaments in college. Maybe it's crazy to think about a 20-year-old getting burned out, but that was how I began to feel after Disney. After I got some rest at the end of the year, I won the Mercedes Championships, the tournament reserved for the previous season's winners, at the start of 1997. I was pointing to the Masters by then, and my education in the short game around Augusta definitely continued on Monday of tournament week. I played 9 holes with Seve and Ali. It was a master class, and when I thought about it, their games reminded me in some ways of the improvisational jazz my dad loved. He appreciated when the talent meshed various musical elements and made something out of nothing. You couldn't practice improvisational jazz because it would then be something else. You could practice all kinds of shots at Augusta, but inevitably you would put yourself in a spot that you hadn't been in before.
Whoops.
Seve and Ali were geniuses at improvising, and they were Masters champions, with Seve, as I've said, winning in 1980 and 1983, and Ali in 1994. He would also win in 1999. They gave me a 9-hole lesson in inventive shot making. I was pumped after playing the 9 holes with them. When they continued to play on their own after, I, too, tried all kinds of shots. A while later, I heard a story about Seve that captured his spirit, competitiveness, and creativity. He was playing with Tom Kite in the last round of the '86 Masters, and they were on the par 5 8th hole. Not many guys could get to the green in 2 shots then.
Nice swing.
The ball had yet to turn into an exploding missile. Tom had laid up to about 100 yards, while Seve's second got him within 50 yards of the green. That right there taught me one thing. It wasn't important to Seve to make sure he had a full shot into a green. If he had to hit half or 3/4 shots, fine. I think he enjoyed those far more than full shots. He always wanted to do something with the golf ball. Conventional, by the exact yardage golf, wasn't for him. Seve was the ultimate feel player. I'd appreciated his style since I first met him, and I wasn't surprised to hear this story, especially when I thought about the shots he hit when we played on the Monday of the '97
Heading
Masters.
for the green here.
Kite, I learned, hit a full wedge to the green back on that Sunday in 1986 and hold it. I could just see Seve looking at Tom after he
And
holed
we have
his
a
shot,
27-footer
and then thinking
from here
about
to
the
cup.
crafty shot he was about to play. He had something special in mind. I could see his wizardry at play. Seve then studied his own shot. The hole was cut to the left of a slightly raised portion of the green. Seve had at least a couple of options. He could fly the ball directly at the hole with some sort of a shot and put some spin on the ball to make sure it stopped quickly. But he saw another way. He could use the contours to the right of the hole. Seve chipped the ball up to the green in such a way that it would take the slope and curl toward the hole. I doubt he had practiced that shot, but I'd bet he saw the trajectory and bounces of the roll clearly in his mind's eye.
One over
The ball
for the
scooted
round.
along the fairway, hit the green running, took the slope, rolled left and sideways,
All right.
and fell
Let's
into the
let her
hole
rip.
on top of Tom's ball. They had each holed their approaches and eagled the hole. The way I heard the story, you never saw 2 happier guys. They walked to the green side by side, acknowledging the people who were watching. It's too bad that CBS wasn't covering that hole. It might have been quite a moment. Vintage Seve. The genius of Augusta National is that it allows you to be so imaginative around the greens. The more creative I could be, the more inspired I would feel. This was another reason
No
I
good.
was so excited
Okay,
about my
you're
first
in the
Masters
rough, but
and my
at least
first
you aren't
major
in the real
as a
deep
professional
stuff.
golfer. Chapter 4, Tuesday, April 8th, 1997. The interview room in the media center was jammed. It was Tuesday, mid-afternoon, and my press conference was about to start. I had played an early morning practice round with Marco and was glad to get inside the ropes, which had increasingly become a haven for me. The media's interest in me
Doesn't look like
was
it's on the
already
fairway, but
ratcheting
it's all
up
right.
by the time I played the '95 Amateur in Newport, Rhode Island, and then was quite intense by the '96 Amateur at Pumpkin Ridge near Portland. I was going for 5 USGA events in a row in '95, including 2 U.S. Amateurs in a row. A few players, including Bobby Jones and Jay Sigel, had won 2 straight U.S. Amateurs, but I was going for 3 in a row at Pumpkin Ridge. Interest was so high that about 15,000 spectators showed up for my final match against Steve Scott, who played on the University of Florida golf team. I was told this was the biggest gallery in a U.S. Amateur final since Bobby Jones had gone for the Grand Slam in the 1930 U.S. Amateur at Marion.
You're out
I was
of
5
the
down
bunker.
after the morning 18 holes in the match against Steve, which, like all U.S. Amateur finals, was scheduled for 36 holes with sudden death extra holes if necessary. I was still 2 down with 3 holes to go, but I rallied to be all square after 36, and then I won on the second extra hole. My main goal, my only goal, all day, was to stay focused. There'd been speculation all week about when I planned to turn pro. Would it be right after the tournament? Later? I tried to fend it off by saying I intended to turn pro in the future. I was still an amateur, and nobody had ever won 3 straight U.S. amateurs. It was a completely different deal from going for 2 in a row, and then it was also going to be for 6 straight USGA titles. That upped the ante even more. I also happened to shoot 69-67 and qualify for the match play portion of the tournament as medalist, which meant I was the #1 seed. The interest from fans and media that had been building was at a peak, at least for my amateur career. I needed to get into what my dad called my major mode by putting a wall around myself. It felt weird sometimes, as if when I was talking to people, it was somebody else who was talking. I could hear myself talking while I was thinking about my game at the same time.
Okay, back
there was
on
an
the fairway.
out-of-body
This
quality
is a good
about
thing.
these times. I just didn't want to get out of the cocoon of concentration. I enjoyed being there, and I needed all the focus and mental strength that I could muster. Then I won, and I was exhausted, but what a great feeling. 3 straight U.S. juniors, followed by 3 straight U.S.
Looks like
amateurs.
you're gonna hit some
I
sand
announced 2
here.
days after the win that I was turning pro. And now, 7.5 months later, I was at Augusta to play the Masters. It didn't surprise me that the media interest had increased so much that the interview room was standing room only. This was flattering, but at the same time, I had been on a mission for years not to let the interest go to my head. The press conference got off to an odd start in that my response to the first question made for an uneasy moment in the room. Danny Yates, an Augusta member, was running the room during my interview and said, "Well, we've got what y'all have been waiting for all day, so Tiger, say a few words and we'll let them have a go at you." I answered exactly as he asked, with 3 words: hi and bye. I was messing around, but then again, that's how my dad taught me to answer questions from the media.
And
If
that'll
they
keep
asked me
you
what club I hit
at
into a
2
green,
over
I
for the
gave the
round.
number of the club. I wouldn't elaborate and say something like, I hit 7 iron.
Okay,
I was thinking
hole
8, but
number
I felt
6.
some wind come up, and I didn't want to take a chance of knocking the ball down and leaving it in the front bunker. Nope. I was asked what club I hit, and I answered. That was it. I realized this wasn't the way to become popular with the media, but that's the approach my dad taught me to employ. But I also wanted to be respectful at the Masters when asked a question. I knew Mr. Yates was asking for more than hi and bye. My answer still wasn't full of information. That wasn't my nature, and never
All right,
would
looking
be.
good so far?
I said, "No, I guess, as always, it's a pleasure to be here at Augusta. I'm definitely looking forward to playing." I could see the collective yawn in front of
looking
me.
at
I wasn't
120
known
yards
as
or
a
so to the
good
pin.
quote or a good interview. At that point, Mr. Yates opened up the floor to questions. Right away, I was asked about whether tour life was as demanding as I thought it would be. I went into default mode and answered, no, a lot more. It took a follow-up question of travel, media, autographs, what, to draw me out. I wasn't trying to be cagey or play with the media, but I was wary.
Great contact.
I was looking
nice
out
swing.
at a sea of reporters and didn't know many of them. I didn't know who I could trust, and so I wasn't going to say whatever came into my mind. I preferred to be insulated from the world outside the ropes, though I knew I couldn't live like that. Maybe I would ease up with the media. It was still so early in my pro career that I wasn't sure how it would go. I didn't want to let anybody outside my circle of close friends and family, anybody, inside my head. But I recognized that I had media obligations. I was trying to find a balance between the private and the public. I hadn't found it, and I'm not sure I ever have. In looking at the transcript of that
that'll
Tuesday
keep
interview,
you at 2
I see that I
over
felt
for
the
the
same
round.
way then as I had for years as an amateur. The travel, media,
7th
and
hole
autographs
coming
were
up.
why tour life was more demanding than life as an amateur. I said something I had always believed and felt, that the golf part is actually the easiest part. That part I love to do. I went on to say that it was difficult to satisfy everybody who wanted a piece of my time and that I had learned to say no. In a way, it was a feat that I could even speak at these big media gatherings or in public at all, because I had stuttered badly
This
as a
one's
kid in
looking
elementary
good.
school. My stuttering was so noticeable and made me feel so anxious that I made sure to sit at the back of the classroom, hoping that my teachers wouldn't call on me. Why would you sit in the front row if you couldn't speak? My mind worked, but I couldn't get the words out from my mind to my mouth. Anytime I had to speak, I stuttered so badly that I gave up. Eventually, Mom took me to a speech therapist. The speech therapist concluded that hearing two languages, English and Thai, at a young age confused me and led to the stuttering. I went to a special after-school program for 2 years to learn how to speak comfortably. All through school, I continued to fight through my stuttering problems so I could develop the confidence to apply to a top university. I even talked to my dog, a half-lab and half-retriever named Boom Boom. He was named because his voice was so loud for a little pup. He listened to me until he fell asleep. Learning how to stop stuttering was a lot tougher than changing my swing, that's for sure. Many years later, in 2015, I learned about a youngster who stuttered from an article in Golf Digest by Ron Cyrack. The boy stuttered so badly that he tried to commit suicide because he was bullied. His parents stopped him just before he jumped from his bedroom window, but he fractured his ankle while being pulled back. I found out that he liked to watch me on television, so I got his name and wrote a letter encouraging it, and reassuring him that he, too, could overcome his stuttering. The former LPGA Tour player Sophie Gustafson, who also stutters, was mentoring the boy, and Ron had written about this, too. What a wonderful and generous thing for Sophie to do.
Sweet.
As for me, looking back, I can only say that to go from sitting at the back of the classroom because of fear, to going to Stanford, to sitting in front of 200 people in the media center and answering questions, even reluctantly, well, I thought I had come a long way. The press conference lasted quite a while. I enjoyed the bits where we talked about the course and strategy and pointed out that I thought Masters winners had one thing in common: they kept the ball below the hole. It was impossible to score at Augusta if you were putting from above the hole. I had that lesson burned into me for all time when I putted off the first green that first round of my first Masters 2 years before. The trick to playing Augusta was to never hit your approach to where the ball would stay above the hole. That meant, as I said, that you had to be very strategic in your iron play. That's set up for your tee shots too, I said. You can't just fire it down the fairway and hope for the best. You have to place your tee shots. Mo was showing me that in our morning practice round. You could never learn that enough. I kept these ideas at the forefront of my mind as I moved toward the first round. Augusta makes it easy to focus on your preparation. The Masters does the best job of any tournament in the world of helping shield players from the spotlight. The practice grounds were clear of people except for instructors and caddies, and in general they did a tremendous job of protecting the players. Television crews weren't allowed on the range, and the same went for other media. You could get your practice done without distraction, which was not the case at other tournaments. Pro golfers are lucky to have the fame and the media glare that come with it, and I have never forgotten that. But at the same time, the practice areas and the putting green were our offices where we did the work that made us worth watching in the first place. I'm not the only player who would like more privacy on the practice ranges at PGA Tour events. On the course, at Augusta, it was only the player and his caddy. Nobody else. The media were allowed inside the ropes at PGA Tour events,
we have about 165
but not at the
yards
Masters,
to go still.
Not even during practice rounds. Even the instructors weren't allowed inside the ropes. Butchie walked with the gallery, outside the ropes. If I wanted to talk to him, I walked over to him. My practice round in the morning with Marco had gone well. Augusta was all about where you placed your drives based on where the pins were that day. If the hole was cut on the front of the green at 9, I wanted to be sure to hit my approach past the hole and not put so much spin on the ball that it would roll back the steep slope and off the green, something that happened to Norman in the last round of the '96 Masters. Thinking about another hole, the 17th, I didn't want to short-side myself if the pin was on the right side of the green. That was an almost impossible up and down. Still, I could see where it would be difficult to go through an entire Masters without making some mistakes, especially into the greens. I tried to learn where to miss the ball so that I could have a decent chance of getting up and down. The guys I'd played practice rounds with knew what to do at Augusta with their short games, so I asked mostly short game questions. The easy part was blowing my drives over the top of the fairway bunkers. The hard part was to decide where to miss my approaches to each flag, and if I did miss it, what shot to play from there.
Nice.
There were no excuses for me to miss all these types of shots in those ways.
Okay, that takes
Especially
you down
not
to
after
even par.
playing in the
Nice.
Masters before, and not after having practice rounds with many of the best players in the game, including former winners. One of the elements that I was able to use to my advantage was the ball I used at the time, which was the Titleist Professional 90. It had a liquid core and wound construction with a cast urethane cover. The ball spun a lot, and I could do quite a bit with it. However, I could also get into trouble with it when I made a bad swing, because the ball moved much more in the wind. It would drift on the wind, even if I hit a shot where I was trying to hold it up against the wind. But around the greens, it was the perfect ball for Augusta. It also helped that we were using square grooves then, which allowed for more spin. While I had signed with Titleist when I turned pro, the arrangement was that I could play any clubs I wanted until Titleist developed equipment for me. I was already using a Titleist ball. I used Mizuno MP29s in my 2, 3, and 4 irons, and MP14s from the 5 iron through the pitching wedge. My sand wedge and 60 degree were Cleveland Classic. I also played with a King Cobra 10.5 degree driver and a Titleist PT 15 degree 3-wood. My putter was a Scotty Cameron with a Terillium insert. It resembled the Ping Answer 2 that I had used for years. Every putter I have used looks like the Answer 2 because I grew up with that putter. I liked the slight offset that allowed me to have my hands just ahead of the ball at impact. And the plumber's neck made sense for me because my stroke moved on an arc. I felt totally comfortable with my equipment, maybe because I didn't mess around much with it. All that mattered to me was that the clubs delivered when I made the swings I wanted. Augusta would expose any weaknesses if I didn't have more than a few different shots in my repertoire. I had the 3 wedges in my bag, and this gave me enough options for shots depending on the lie around the green. My pitching wedge was 51 degrees, and I also carried a 56 sand wedge and a 60. The 56 and 60 were the only clubs in my bag that had square grooves.
And that'll
I like the V grooves in the rest of my irons, especially on courses where there was rough. I was fine with flyers out of the rough, and I had learned how to control the flyer. Around the greens, though, it was a different story. I wanted to know exactly how far I could pitch the ball with various lengths of swing at differing speeds. I wanted to know how the ball would react when it hit the green. After my practice round Tuesday, I couldn't see myself using the 60 except out of greenside bunkers when I did short side myself. I hoped that wouldn't happen. It all depended on where I placed my drives. If I gave myself the proper angles to the pins, I could avoid being in many bunkers.
Pretty deep stuff.
I had learned
here.
during my practice rounds that I could play different angles
put it in
at
the right
Augusta.
direction.
It wasn't only a matter of standing up and bombing it down the middle of the fairway because there was so much room before the club added rough, the second cut, and before it lengthened the course for the 2002 Masters. Trees were also added, and as the course changed, so did the way I viewed it. It was becoming less of an inland links and more of a parkland course. But it was still an inland links back in '97, which meant I could pick and choose from a wide variety of shots. The 11th hole comes to mind when I think back on the way the course was playing. I could drive the ball far to the right, both because the fairway was so wide and there weren't any trees to speak of on that side. From there, I had an ideal angle into the green, and I didn't even have to think about the water at the left front. It didn't come into play from the right side,
like this may be
even
in the
from
deep
where the
stuff.
gallery was. Ben Hogan used to say that if he hit the green with his second shot, you knew he had made a mistake because he never went for the green. Hogan was hitting a mid or long iron for his second shot, and so he was only being smart when he played right of the green and away from the pond to the left. I was hitting the ball so far that I was using a short iron or wedge into the green. Playing from the right side, and with that short a club in my hands, allowed me to hit my approach to the green, and sometimes directly to the hole. If I missed the green, you knew I had made a mistake. If the flag was on the right-hand side of the green, I drove to the middle left of the fairway and then played to the middle left of the green. The strategy worked for me. I was playing a different course than Hogan had played, not because Augusta National had changed the course.
Let's see what happens
yet,
here.
But because I was hitting the ball so far and because the course was so spacious. Even in my amateur days, I was never much of a guy for hanging around the course after I played a tournament round, or, for that matter, a practice round. The only reason I ever stayed was to practice. Otherwise, I was out of there. I saw no reason to change after I turned pro.
I don't know if this has
I did
enough.
what I had to do in terms of any media obligations, such as the press conference or any interviews with the various networks that had the television rights to the Masters.
Green with some
Jerry
work to
drove
do.
me home
All right,
after the press conference
25-footer
Tuesday.
From here to the
I wasn't
cup.
one to nap, so that was out. We played some hoops, a lot of ping pong, and some video games. I needed those distractions. I didn't want to be thinking about the Masters every minute during the week. The week of the Masters itself was a time for me to practice, sure, but I was there to play the tournament, not to find my game. The house was chill. It was that way all week because I was home with my friends and family. We got to hang out and have a good time. If I had stayed in college, I'd have been a junior. Instead, I was a tour pro at the Masters. My pre-tournament media conference was over, and I felt it had gone well. The atmosphere had loosened up after the way it started. Now, it was my job to play well enough for a return visit, or a few return visits to the media center. Chapter 5, Wednesday, April 9th, 1997. When I woke up Wednesday morning, I felt the excitement I'd become used to when an important tournament was approaching. Golf's a weird game. You need to feel both a sense of power when you want to rip a drive down there and almost subdued when you're facing a delicate shot over a bunker to a pin just on the other side, with the green running away from you. I had learned to control my heart rate through breathing, not that this was ever easy. I wanted explosiveness to drive the ball at Augusta so that I'd come in with wedges that would give me an advantage. I studied what goes into being explosive, something that would continue as I got older.
Some deep stuff.
It was a matter of developing fast-twitch muscle fibers, which I worked on by doing powerlifting in the gym. The most effective way of doing this is by lifting heavy weights at a fast pace. Although you're born with fast twitch, you can also develop it. Sprinting also helps develop fast-twitch muscles, so I did that as well. In both cases, the key is to have a training program that mixes short duration with high intensity. Developing fast-twitch muscles helped me really tear through the ball from the top of my backswing. What also takes a lot of work is going from fast-twitch to slow-twitch in the space of a few minutes, from bombing a drive to that tricky little pitch shot to Augusta's slick, undulating greens. It's much easier to develop slow twitch
from
than
rough
fast
to
twitch.
some
I trained to develop more
rough.
slow twitch muscle fibers by doing long endurance runs and by lifting at a slower rate of speed than when training fast twitch. I also did more reps. I always looked forward to spending time in the gym, often for hours. I was only 21, but I knew my nature. I was high-strung. I wanted to feel the adrenaline while playing tournament golf, but also to be able to calm myself down at will. Marco and I would talk a lot about this from the time we first met. He'd won all over the world, but he hadn't won any majors. It was hard to win majors, or any tournaments for that matter, but I wondered whether he thought any factors in particular had kept him from winning those. I was curious why a player of his caliber hadn't won a major. He didn't know, but it certainly wasn't for lack of trying.
Nice.
One of the mysteries of tournament golf, or of any sport, is why some players have a knack for winning and winning a lot. There's an intangible factor, and it's difficult to come to grips with what it is. Marco didn't mind my asking why he hadn't won a major, though. He was like a big brother to me, a mentor in many ways. We had the sort of friendship in which we could talk about anything. Still, it was apparent he didn't want to be hung with that best player not to win a major tag. But we could also joke around and give it to one another. Although the crowds were massive during every practice round, they seemed even bigger to me on Wednesday. Maybe it was the magnitude of the occasion, but I felt all eyes were on me. That made me uneasy, although you would think I would have adjusted to it by that time. Still, I felt uncomfortable. Mo helped me deal with the attention. He showed me that I could get in the practice I wanted, hit my shots, but still be relaxed, and even kid around with the people watching. I tried to do that, but I was also locking in more and more so that I could get to the first tee Thursday in the frame of mind I wanted. I was hitting the ball the way I wanted during my last practice round. I was getting into that state where when I'm playing, I'm in my tournament armor. But in practice, I did want to be able to enjoy the moment and to enjoy the people watching me. I wasn't always successful, especially after I hit a shot I didn't like, but I did try. If I was going to succeed in majors, I had better get used to the attention. Marco saw what was going on. On the ninth tee, he said, "Can you imagine if you had $5 for every picture people are taking of you?" We kept playing, and I was very careful to watch him on the greens. He was a very good putter, so I observed how he played the right amount of break and speed. He was a control player, and so I also watched to see where and when he decided to be aggressive based on where the holes were cut. My friend Jay Brunzip had also helped me to prepare for the Masters. He helped me control my creativity. I sometimes wanted to do too much with a shot, instead of hitting a conventional shot. Augusta could trick you into wanting to play a funky shot, even if the circumstances didn't require it. Why mess around when you have a stock shot in front of you? Then again, how do you maintain the balance between playing creative golf and what might be called standard golf? Jay also helped me understand that I wasn't good at visualizing a shot. Sports psychologists and mental coaches have advised for years that you should see the shot before you play it. But I couldn't do that. I never could, and I still can't. I couldn't say to myself, okay, this is the trajectory I see, this is how the shape of the shot will look. My mind would run away. I saw too much, which isn't helpful in golf. I instead had to learn and to accept that my nature was to feel a shot with my hands and my body. I felt what I wanted my hands to do at impact and trusted that the feeling would create the motion to hit the ball to the spot I wanted. In contrast, Jack Nicklaus didn't pull the putter back until he saw the shot he wanted, or on the green until he saw the ball going into the hole.
Over for the round.
I didn't understand how he did that, just as I'm sure he didn't understand my approach.
All right, let's let it rip.
As the first round approached, I was concerned about one aspect of my swing. I was very flashy through the ball because I was so far across the line at the top of my backswing. I had worked hard with Butchie on my swing plane, and it had improved dramatically, but I still found myself having problems getting on plane. I had to save my impact position with my hands, which is what I mean by being flashy. My arms and body weren't feeling in sync, which was crucial to go hard at the ball or
you got some real estate to
ease up
cover
for
with
a
this
soft
next
shot.
one.
Butchie and I had worked hard on the problem the week before Augusta, and I'd also tried to watch Marco closely. Maybe his control would rub off on me, I thought. In the meantime, I relied on timing my impact position with my hands to get the face in the position to hit the shot I wanted. I dumped my hands a little under the plane coming through. It looked like I was dropping my hands in front of me. I reminded myself, though, that I had shot 59 the week before and that I had come in swinging well. I wasn't far off coming into the week.
Yes.
I had things dialed in nicely, but golf being golf,
and that
I had slipped a little.
Brings you down
I didn't tell
to even
anybody
par.
but
Not
Butchie
bad.
that I was afraid of hooking the ball as the first round approached.
All right, let's
I was fighting a hook
and
up to Augusta,
smash
getting
this
stuck
next drive.
and flippy. I got to a point where I was striping my driver in practice, but would it hold up under the gun? Would it really work? I had enough doubt in my mind that I wondered when a bad drive would come out and head left. I was getting stuck, and there didn't seem to be much I could do about it except hope that my timing was on during the tournament. It wasn't as if I hadn't worked consistently on improving my plane. It was a work in progress, and I figured maybe it always would be. I had started the game so early that it wasn't easy to find equipment that worked well.
Looking good.
Individualized club fitting wasn't nearly as popular or as sophisticated when I was a 5-year-old in 1980. My dad organized my clubs, and he did the best he could with what was known in my early days. He took a person he considered average in size, somewhere around 6 feet tall, and did a proportionality slide of how long a club should be based on a person's height. Pop came up with what he was looking for. Because of that, I had clubs that fit me. So I didn't have to make the bad swing adjustments that kids made to clubs that didn't fit them. But there was one problem with the clubs. They were heavy. My dad cut down his clubs in which the shafts were X100 as they were measured. They were cut down to a size where I could use them, but they were still heavy. Thus, when I first started, I had to learn how to create all the power and speed out of my body when using this heavy equipment. I was too small and weak as a kid to do this with my hands alone, so I used my hips to create the speed. As I progressed, the shaft never flexed for me, or if it did flex, I didn't feel it. It just came about. I didn't force it. And as I got older, this technique helped me move my hips faster in my downswing and through impact. These methods, plus what I can only describe as instinct, must have led me to figure out a way to get the club back to the ball in as square a position as possible, and to do so with speed. When my dad switched me over to clubs that were close to regular length when I was 13, I freaked out. I felt the shaft kick for the first time. I couldn't time the shaft to get back to the ball properly. Suddenly, the shaft was flexing when I took it back. I wondered what was going on and asked my dad. He told me it was the flex in the shaft working, and that I would hit the ball a lot farther once I started timing it right. I didn't know if I needed to speed up or slow down. Eventually, I figured it out, but it took a long time. Coming into the Masters, I still tended to spin my hips so fast sometimes that I would outrun my hands. That was why my playing went wonky. When I was playing well, I could feel exactly what my body was doing during my swing and what was wrong when I was out of position.
Okay, let's see if you can
save power. The science says it's
here.
Impossible to make a change inside of a motion that takes a second and a half or so. But I believed I could make the compensation on the way down, or halfway down, or right before impact. I could fix what was wrong. I could save the shot with my hands. As it turned out, that came in handy during the Masters. My dad taught me how to save a shot by ordering me at the top of my swing to hit a particular type of shot, a draw, or a big hook,
and with
or
that,
a fade,
you
or a big
will
slice.
stay at even par.
That was just fun and games, but it trained me to be able to save the shot when things weren't going well.
Time to send this ball on its way.
Oh man, I made a terrible backswing there. What could I do? I'm going to have to slide my hips a bit forward to delay the hit, or else this ball's going dead left. Or other times, damn it, I really have to release my hips and open them up. I have to push off my right foot. Okay, I have to delay my hands, slow down my upper body, or I need to speed up my left arm or my right arm. Extend it now. I felt all those things as I learned to save the shot. To me, that's being in the moment. Now, this doesn't mean I could compete at the highest levels with that action all the time, but it was encouraging to know I had it in me, especially when I wasn't in sync during my practice rounds and practice sessions. Butchie put me through a full swing drill that I didn't like from the moment we started working together.
Not gonna
the drill was meant
it.
to help me improve my playing by getting my arms and body working together. He felt I needed to learn to keep my arms more in front of me throughout the swing. That way, I would be less reliant on timing. It would also improve my playing because my arms and hands weren't flipping the club off plane. Butchie had me take the club to the top and stop there. The next step was to rock back with some momentum, then start down and complete my swing. I was not fond of this drill because it was impossible to create any speed when I stopped my swing. I was young. I liked power, and I had it, even if it was created through flash instead of a smooth transfer of energy. But the drill wasn't about power. I lost all momentum when I stopped the club at the top. Rocking back produced very little momentum. I wasn't making a golf swing. I was stopping and starting.
Could be in the
to
rough
find
here.
a position that would promote consistency. The point was for me to feel where the club was at the top and then
here. I think
let it go
this
from
the
there
cabbage.
in conjunction with my body.
Let's just try to make
the
some
drill was about developing
that
a
ball
feel
headed in the right
and the proper sequence from the position at the top as a means of creating accuracy and speed. The drill did improve my sequence, and more important, I got the feel of where I wanted the club at the top. It was often rough going and frustrating, but eventually I got to where I could do it naturally without thinking about it. I still tended to fall back into the habits I'd learned when I started golf with clubs that were too heavy for me.
Hole.
That wasn't going away. Not for good anyway. Every golfer has faults he will have to monitor for his entire career. My major error of getting stuck started when I was a kid, and it wasn't going to disappear entirely. Ever. The par 3 contest was on Wednesday afternoon, as it had been for years. It's one of those traditions that make the Masters unique. The par 3 course is beautiful. I played the par 3 every year through 2004, when I got a hole-in-one on the 9th hole while playing with Mo and Arnold.
Great putt in there.
I shot 23 that year and tied for the low score with Padraig Harrington.
That'll keep you
Nobody had won the par 3 and
nice.
gone on to win the Masters in the same year. I wasn't going to test the historical
the
record,
18th hole
and
here.
I bowed to superstition.
Let's clear our
I
heads.
chose not to play off for the crystal that the club gives to the winner. In addition to the superstition, I felt the par 3 was a distraction from the tournament and maybe a bit too close to the first round for me. I stopped playing after 2004, but after my children Sam and Charlie were born, I decided to play again when they were old enough to caddy for me. Sam was 7 and Charlie was 6 in 2015 when I played the par 3 again. I was glad I did. Over the years, the par 3 contest had become quite a family event, with kids, grandkids, wives, and other family members caddying.
I'd say
it was more of a gambling event when I first played it.
Pin.
Guys would play with their buddies, and usually for a pretty good amount. Some serious amounts of cash were exchanged in the locker rooms. That still happens, but not nearly as much, not with the kids around. I played the par 3 in 1997 with Tom Kite, and luckily, I didn't win. It was such a pretty 9 holes, playing around 2 ponds.
Nice swing.
Many of the banks around the tiny greens were shaved like the main course. If you missed a green, the ball rolled away into the water. The par 3 course at Augusta hasn't changed since I first played it. The holes are the same lengths, 70 to 135 yards. Maybe there's a lesson here. There's more to the game than length. Sure, the par 3 course is meant for fun, and it's not supposed to be a tournament course. But when I think of some of the best holes in golf, many are short par 3s. The 7th at Pebble Beach is barely over 100 yards and is one of the most entertaining and challenging holes in golf. Tour pros don't like to have to hit half shots, but that's what we hit on most of the holes at the par 3 course. Then there's the par 3 155-yard 12th at Augusta. It's one of the few holes that hasn't changed at Augusta National since I played the 97 Masters.